Let's talk about the mayor's race coming up because, you've got Cathy Murillo. She's a former journalist, and she made the transition to city council, and then she got elected mayor. And she had a really high-profile, controversial, bad moment during the Black Lives Matter protest. Where she got into an altercation, a verbal altercation with the organizers, and she did not come out looking very good in that situation. And I don't know where you were that day. I was there. I was, taking photos and writing a story, and it ballooned into a thing where Cathy Murillo didn't want to take a knee. And then it sort of turned into this thing of, where has she been? We've organized for you. We've knocked on doors for you, and we still have all these problems, and you're not doing your job. And that was a big deal for her. And then the next subsequent city council meetings, you had a lot of people calling in and just trashing her publicly during public comment.
Yeah.
And so
that was brutal.
That was really interesting for me because, covering it, that moment was very dynamic. When you're talking about activism and activists rising up and doing the work of trying to make change. We saw that day, right? Mm-hmm. But then the way that it sort of plays out is against this first Latina mayor in Santa Barbara, who for the most part has always advocated for the causes of working class people in Santa Barbara. And so it's like, how did we end up with this situation where she's being villainized? And then you've got, of course, all the usual people who aren't going to like a candidate or elected official like her, who are going to, criticize her as being bad for business, okay? Somebody who doesn't want to do enough for the homeless. So she's got all those sort of built in.
Not for, against the homeless.
Right. So, she's got all of that. Can you talk a little bit about the mayor and like, did she do a bad job? And what do you think of that moment that went down where she didn't take a knee right there in front of everybody? She did later, but not in that moment.
Right. Yeah, that was interesting. And I also was not there at the time. And so I experienced it more via comments, things written on social media by some of the activists, the Black Lives Matter activists, who I adore and respect and am grateful to and inspired by. And then talking to Cathy, and then talking to some of them again, and then sort of piecing it together afterwards. And it is like a really interesting story, right? And a good example of the, why I often say, politics is an art and not a science, and there's difficult nuances. But here's the thing. The thing that I said before about there needing to be a political project, the Democratic Party, some kind of reformist politics that is willing to hold elected officials accountable, is policy focused, right? And like really looks at their record so they don't get a pass just because they're a Democrat. The flip side of that, right, is it's also not about symbolic politics and, who says the most radical thing. You got to look at the record, and you got to look at the whole political context and environment, right? And that's kind of what you were getting at, is that, so my argument, and I argued with them. I mean, I engaged with them because they're activists trying to make good change in the world, but that doesn't mean that everything that comes out of their mouth is right and true. And I was like, look, Cathy Murillo spilled a lot of political capital, a lot of political blood in challenging the police department over her career politically. She just got out of a fight for a campaign for state office where it was, the whatever you want to call it, law and order, tough on crime garbage that was thrown at her was, that was the main line of attack. And what really went down there, was it about opposition to police reform, or was it about you wanted her to say a certain thing at a certain time and she didn't, and she was like next to police when you didn't want her to be, and all of that. All of those are reasons maybe to be mad at her as well, but like, let's just keep them separate. And so, and I said the same thing to Cathy. Like, I don't know why didn't you roll up with the police why would there were a whole bunch of questions I had about what she did too, but she's a human being, and she's the mayor of Santa Barbara, not the, the general secretary of NATO. And she's going to make diplomacy mistakes, and they shouldn't be the thing that is the axis of politics in Santa Barbara. So, but here, all of that said is, if people have complaints about Cathy's votes or where she puts, the kind of city spotlight and focus, because she doesn't actually have control over city resources unilaterally. It's not a strong mayor system. So if people have concerns, bring them to bear when Cathy comes to get endorsements for things. What I say to young people getting active in Santa Barbara, is like, hey, actually, we spent like 20 years building some structures so you can use them to move the agenda you want. That was what I think my generation of party activists here did starting in the early 2000s, So if they are mad at Cathy about policy, there's a whole bunch of ways to jam her up about it and try to push her to change or get her to say things. So anyway, that to me, it was like kind of framed as like the end of the world, and this is we're seeing into Cathy Murillo's soul, and I think it wasn't that.